You know, life has a way of surprising us. We've all had unexpected moments that really end up impacting who we are. I'm Chavie Brooke, and let me tell you, I've had my fair share of these moments. On Totally Unexpected, I don't just interview my guests. We have long, meaningful conversations to explore the twists and the turns that change their lives. You won't only be hearing from the guest, you'll be hearing from me and my thoughts and reflections, just as I would be doing in real life. These aren't traditional interviews, they're conversations about struggle, growth, and the moments that make us human. We all just want to feel connected. At least I do. And if we end up feeling a little less alone, that would make me so happy. Welcome back to Totally Unexpected, the best place ever. Okay, so how is everybody doing today? I had a little bit of a rough start to my day. Technical issues. Technical issues will be the end of me, but it will not be the end of me because I will persevere. I love the podcast so much that despite the technical issues, we forge ahead. Anyway, very excited for today's podcast. Before I introduce the guest, let's talk a little bit about what there is going on. Number one, podcast every other Monday. Tune in. If you listen on Apple, it would be so nice if you rate and review. If you listen on Spotify, you can leave a comment and you can rate. Feedback is amazing. It helps me know what you like, what you don't like. Last week's conversation was with Amy Barron from I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. She shared her personal story, which was so incredible and heartfelt and vulnerable. And we had the best conversation. We also talked about burnout at the end of that podcast, which inspired me to bring the conversation to you. Because as you know, in the outro, we have a voice note section where every other week I share a prompt where you can share your thoughts, stories, and sometimes it's even a hot take. So this week, the prompt was about burnout. What do you think about burnout? Have you experienced burnout? What did it feel like? Is there a way that you know how to prevent burnout? It was all of the meat and potatoes about burnout. And so stay tuned for that at the end of the show. Substack. Substack, you get a new essay in your inbox if you subscribe every Tuesday. So subscribing is amazing. It doesn't cost anything. You are welcome to subscribe for pay, but you don't have to. And if you subscribe, you don't have to wait to see when the next essay is coming out. It goes right into your inbox, and that is really fun. And every week there's something new every Tuesday. This past week, it was a throwback to an RV trip that we did. And then last week, I did a little review on the bar mitzvah with incredible pictures from Chana Blomis, which I think is the highlight of the post. So if you want to see some really fun pictures, go check it out. Anyways, without further ado, I want to introduce this guest. This guest is very, very special to me. Her name is Paola Feher. She's a very close friend of mine in Bozeman. We've known each other for 18 years now. And one of my favorite things that I get to do is to share people who are very close to me who have changed my life in a very big way. And Paola is definitely one of those people. You, I'm sure, have heard of her. If you are a follower, she's the leader of the yoga retreat I go to in Mexico. She does body work, she does yoga, and now she's an Ayurveda practitioner. She has her master's in biomechanics, she has her master's in Ayurveda, she's a massage therapist, she's a yoga therapist. She started her own business where she works with people with chronic pain and injury to rehabilitate injuries and also to prevent injuries. And now with the addition of Ayurveda, she also works with illness prevention and recovery. And she's incredible. has changed my life in so many ways. I used to go to Paola for body work, for a lot of headaches and all of that stuff. I go to the yoga retreats, and now I am fully bought in to Ayurveda, which is something pretty incredible. And in this podcast, you will get to hear all about it. You'll also get to hear a little bit about Paola herself. Okay, she's actually like, I'm in awe of her because not only does she do all of those things, but she's also extremely outdoorsy and athletic. She has a gorgeous garden that she grows all her fruits and vegetables, and it's insane. And never mind, we climb, we ski, mountain bike, run, yoga, whatever, all the things, all the things. So, somebody who has a lot to share. I think you will really enjoy this episode. And I'm almost 100% sure you will learn something new. And I can't wait for you to listen. So, without further ado, enjoy. If you want to sponsor, please reach out. I think it's not a secret that podcasts are funded through sponsorships and advertisements. There's no secret way to go about it. And I would love to partner with all of you and any of you. Please reach out. All my contact information is in the show notes. And we're very grateful to all our partnerships and all our sponsorships. I want to start with how we know each other, because that's always good context. I moved to Bozeman 19 years ago. You came for the first time to a Pesach seder. Am I right?
Yes.
With Holly. Was it with Holly?
She's the one that told me about you. I didn't come with her, but she persuaded me.
Persuaded you to do the scary thing.
Against my better judgment.
Against your better judgment. So true. And what, 17 years ago? 18 years ago?
18, I believe.
18 years ago. You came for the first time to a Pesach seder. But by the way, like, scary thing to come to for the first time, like a Pesach seder. And I don't know, I kind of want to say the rest is history. Like, we...
Love at first sight.
Love at first sight.
Too much.
Okay, tell from your perspective.
I was looking for a place to do Pesach seder because that was the one thing that we always did with my family, being very reformed. And the other alternative here in Bozeman was not appealing to me. So I thought I would give you a go. It was such a great experience. And I just remember sort of following you into the kitchen, this beautiful young woman with bright red lipstick and high heels and so fashionable and just so bubbly. And your husband with his sense of humor and telling jokes and stories. And I thought, I'm home.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So that's where it all started. And then, you know, when you were like, someone is so ingrained in your life and you're such good friends and it's like family, but like, it almost was like, and that's how it was. Like, it's hard to remember, like, okay, what was like, what was the trajectory and how did that happen? But like, we connected right away. And we always call each other like soul sisters. We just have that connection. And 18 years later, here we are. And we've gone through so much together. And I have learned so much from you. And you have changed my life in a very big way in my physical health and even my mental health too. So you're so wise and have so much to offer and such an amazing perspective on our bodies, mind-body connection. And we're gonna go on the journey. So to take us all the way back, you grew up in San Diego.
Correct.
Born and raised. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and what that was like.
So I grew up, I have one sister. We're very close. She's 2 years older. My parents, they're both gone now, but they were immigrants. So I'm a first generation American, North American. My mother was from Argentina. My father was from Czechoslovakia. He fled during World War II and made his way to what was then Palestine, is now Israel. My mother, they met here in New York.
Oh, really?
They were both physicists. So I was raised in a very, very intellectual home where intellect was highly esteemed.
Yeah.
My father came to this country with very little. He had to borrow $500 to get in, and my mother came to further her studies to get her doctorate, and that's where she met my father. So yeah, it was a childhood of highly educated academics.
Yeah. So growing up with two very, very intellectual, brilliant parents, what was that like? Did you feel like you had to live up to a certain standard?
I felt really stupid.
Yeah.
I
Which
think
is shocking because you're brilliant yourself, but yes.
there was a sense that it was sort of never enough,
Yeah.
that we never knew enough. We, meaning my sister and I.
Mhm.
I know I should really not speak for her, but
Yeah.
there was a sense that being a straight A student wasn't enough, that whatever that was that you knew wasn't quite enough.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of that was self-imposed, right?
The narratives we tell ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, or because we pick up on an energy and then all of a sudden we're adapting or we're translating things and then it becomes part of
Yeah.
the story.
I know that, you know, my mother passed not 3 years, maybe 3.5 years ago, and even up until she died, I used to say to her, "I just wish I were as bright as you, or as smart as you, or knew
Mm,
as much as you."
yeah.
Mhm.
So I am curious because you're so intellectual, which is actually super fascinating, but you ended up on a path finding yoga and kind of going out into the world, spending a lot of time in nature and the wilderness. What made you do that?
So my mother was actually quite influential in the outdoor
Yes.
history. So she grew up, like I said, in Argentina, and her father would take her and her brother and their mother, the four of them would pack up this old Ford and with another family would traverse down into Patagonia, which was back in those days was like the frontier.
Yeah. Even now, the Patagonia is like
Right, but you can fly there,
intense. Right.
right?
Right.
But so they would go with another family in case one of the cars broke down.
Right.
So she comes from a very adventuresome family as well.
Yes.
She
Yes.
did a lot in her teenage years. My father was sporty. My grandfather on my father's side was an Olympian.
Oh, I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, there is some of that sort of outdoor athletic lineage, if you will.
Yeah. It's so fascinating to have like both of those that like intense academic, intellectual pursuit, and then also have the outdoor adventure. And I like literally see that in like that's you. Maybe it took you a while to find it, but like that is literally you. So what were you like when you were a teenager? Like what did you gravitate towards?
At 14, I went on a sort of a month-long outdoor adventure with a group out of Colorado that was similar to what's now Outward Bound, with whom
Mm.
I worked for 10 years as an Outward Bound instructor. So that was pretty formative for me, was to do just this long backpacking trip. And so as a youngster, I was pretty introverted
Mhm.
from age 12 on, maybe 10 on, and pretty depressed. And so I spent a lot of time by myself at the beach on my bike, being outdoors as much as possible, in the water, living by the ocean, spending a lot of time in the ocean. Yeah.
And did you find that that was like, did it make you feel better?
It was my safe place.
Yeah.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. So not just the physical activity, but being in the water,
Immersed.
moving through nature, looking at the trees, watching the birds. Yeah, for sure.
And so eventually you became an Outward Bound instructor for 10 years. What was that like? And tell us a little bit about Outward Bound.
So Outward Bound is this fabulous, fabulous
Does it still exist?
It does. It
Okay.
does. There's quite a number of Outward Bound schools. It was started in Britain after the war when they realized that the people that survived harsh situations in the war were not necessarily the ones that were the fittest, but the ones that looked after each other, created community, and took care of each other. So the idea is to teach youngsters how to survive in the wilderness as a team.
Mm.
So we would go out, and the Colorado Outward Bound school that I worked for was fairly, what's the word I'm looking for? It was very, we did a lot of climbing. We taught the students how to climb, how to build tarps, how to make fires, all of that, how to find their way around the mountains where there's no trails,
Mm.
reading compasses and maps. So like that.
Did you live in the wilderness? Like, it wasn't like a school where you like go home at night, right? Like you.
So the courses are anywhere from 30 to 90 days, and
Okay.
they're backpacking. So
Backpacking.
you do not go to the front country for 30 to 90 days. You're in the back country the whole time
Yeah.
with your backpack.
Wow. So how many times a year were you on these trips? Did you do them multiple times a year?
Yeah, I was 3 or 4 months every summer. I was out in the wilderness with the students. And then by the time I finished my stint, I was being offered full-time work that would have put me in the wilderness more than 6 months a year. But by
Wow.
then I was ready to go back to graduate school. So
Okay. So how old were you during this time?
sort of 21 to 31, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm. And you went back to graduate school for what?
I got my graduate degree in biomechanics here at Montana State.
That's how you ended up in Montana, right?
It is. Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Yoga is such a huge part of your life, and I want to get there. But when did you discover yoga?
Discovered yoga when I was 19.
Okay.
I was an undergraduate and I was having a really hard time deciding the direction of my life. So I was calling my mother one too many times, somewhat panicked. And finally she just said, "You need to learn how to meditate or something, because this is just really intense." So I found a yoga class, and of course in Santa Cruz, as you can imagine, the yoga is really good.
Yeah.
It's in California and it's a fairly alternative community. So I started doing yoga in at the university as one of my electives.
Yeah.
Just fell in love with it, thought it was amazing, and kept doing it sort of mostly on, but on and off a lot on my own until I took it up much more seriously later on in my late 20s.
So, what transitioned from yoga being like this, your own personal thing, and you kind of stumbled into it just to like ground yourself, to it being something that is such a huge part of your life, and now you are yourself a yoga instructor, and you have other, we'll get there, but other things that you do as well. But what was that transition?
I was on this trajectory, really clear in my mind that I wanted to be a mountain guide
Yeah.
full time. I wanted to live in the woods. I wanted to guide. That was really what I wanted to do. And at one point in my early 20s, got hit by a car and sustained an injury that nobody seemed to be able to pinpoint or help me with or heal. I went to the
Mm.
three top orthopedic surgeons in California with varying degrees of success, and finally ended up having a yoga and massage team, a husband and wife team that put me back together. And that is where really the trajectory started. I started doing yoga with her. He started to heal me. And in those 2 years that they worked with me, I started to get back to my guiding career. I was guiding on Mount Baker, and I found that instead of guiding them up Mount Baker, what I was really excited about was showing them yoga stretches on our off days.
Ha. I love that.
Yeah. So I was like, we were on a glacier in our mountaineering boots doing yoga. And I thought
That's
to myself,
incredible.
you know, maybe it's time to kind of like shift gears here because this is much more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And for you, the yoga came along with this biomechanics piece, right? It was almost like you met this couple. One was doing yoga, one was doing body work. And from what I understand, because I've gotten body work done by you for years and years and years. And I always tell people, I'm like, I don't think it exists. Like, what do you even ask for? Like, it's not physical therapy. It's not massage. It's like some kind of magical finger touch that has this like incredible understanding of the body and using your hands, right? There's no machines. There's no it's just your hands. And that is very much embedded in what you do, yoga and biomechanics. It's like together.
Yes, correct.
So when someone asks you, like, well, what in your words, like, how do you explain what you do? I always have such a hard time because I'm like, I don't know. There's nothing like it.
Oh, it depends on the person I'm talking to. Some people I say, most people I'll just say I do alternative physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people, that I do the yoga therapy, corrective massage, biomechanics, ergonomics. I use my hands as my x-ray machine.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard because there's so many pieces to it.
Right. And from my experience, what's really fascinating is like you can go in, let's say I went for headaches and you are figuring it out, you're touching different things. And oftentimes you're like, oh, your headache's coming from here. This like particular piece, like, I don't know, in your shoulder or whatever, like it could be, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that? Like, it's such a, what it comes to mind is like, it's such a deep understanding, but also connection and also energetic. Do you feel like there's energetics involved in
Sure.
and how you operate?
I would say that the energetics is laid on top of the profound grounding in the scientific knowledge. In other words, having done so in my master's program, we are lucky enough here at Montana State to have cadavers left over from the medical school. I did 2 years working with a cadaver. So I hate to say this, but when I'm working on a person, I can see the cadaver. I can see where the muscle originates, where the muscle ends. I know where the nerves are. I know where the arteries and the veins, and I know where everything is, so that when I'm working with a person, that underlies the understanding of what I'm feeling. So I know what I'm feeling, and then everything else sort of sits on top of that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. And I think what I find very interesting and what I think you can encounter when you're working with a professional, and there's so many amazing ways to come at your body, right? There's no one wrong or right way. But what I find is that when it's one dimensional, it's a very different experience. But when you're coming to somebody who has a lot of different layers and has a lot of different knowledge coming from a lot of different areas. So you have your scientific knowledge, which is immense, understanding the body, but then you have your yoga knowledge, which is in addition. So it brings a whole nother perspective. And then you have that energetics piece where you're just like really in tune. It starts to widen that ability to see things that maybe a traditional physical therapist or like other people won't necessarily be able to see because they're coming at it from one angle.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I think that in my own healing journey, what I found was that coming at it from either the Eastern perspective or rather the more spirit or having a spiritual perspective didn't always work for myself coming from such a Western background.
Yeah.
And an intellectual background. In other words, I wanted to know what underlies all that and the why. And then the why isn't always good either because there's always something more to it than just the anatomy. In other words, the anatomy is just a piece of it. It's not the full story or the physiology.
That's really fascinating because you did come from such a Western background, which was, knowledge based and things have to be proven. And yet where you land is very what people call today alternative and very Eastern medicine based. It's so fascinating. And usually you find it's like one or the other, right? You're either very Eastern medicine based or you're very Western medicine based or you're very factual, you're very energetic. But somehow like you managed to kind of fuse both of those things. What was that process? Did it just all of a sudden click and make sense for you, or was something that you really constantly had to reconcile?
There's no. So it's not a reconciliation at all. It's more bringing two parts of myself together. And when I say that, I mean that I have had to grow the both parts simultaneously. I'd say the intellectual part, of course, had a heads up because that's how I grew up. I also had to appease my parents a lot and not worry too much about what they thought or didn't think about what I was doing. My father, for sure, was not a fan when I started this road.
Yeah.
By the end, he was a huge fan because he saw
Yes.
how much I was able to help people and how it worked.
Yeah.
But when I first started down this road, he was very clear that he was not a fan. My mother was a little bit skeptical, but not as much. She has that. So I feel that the outdoor industry really was my spiritual haven. It was my spiritual growth. It was where I felt strong. It was where I felt centered. It was where I felt, for lack of a better word, it's where I felt the godliness come in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 100%.
And I still feel that. And so having felt that, I know how to feel it when I'm working. In other words, I know how, and I know how to help other people find it or feel it.
Yeah.
And I felt like my yoga teacher, the husband and wife team, she was the one that made me realize that I had that because I came from a very culturally Jewish but very atheist home with no spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of to it.
Yeah. And so she's the one that made me realize that that I had this peace to me and that it was when I was in the mountains. It was when I was in nature. And I had never connected the two. You know, she would say,
Yeah.
tell me about your spirituality, and I'd say, I have none. Because
So,
that's what my parents would say.
yeah.
And then she would say, close your eyes and find yourself on the top of a mountain. And then I want you to feel it. She would take me through a meditation. And then when we were done, I'd be like, bright and light and like almost shaking. And I would be telling her about it. And she goes, that's your spirituality. So that it was through the yoga experience that I realized
That there was this,
that there was this.
yeah, there's deeper spiritual part to you, which you access in nature.
I access it. That's how I refuel it, I would say.
Yes.
Because I have it often, more often than not.
Right.
When I don't have it.
Yeah.
But, and I also have it quite often in the workplace where I feel like it's called upon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really profound. And I love what you said about like, that's where you refuel your spirituality. I can relate to that. I think in Tanya, it's very fascinating that a lot of when you're looking to create like an emotion or a feeling for God, right? And try to access God. And God is, an esoteric thing. And sometimes it's really hard to create or to have a physical, real emotion or create a real relationship with something that's so esoteric. And in the Tanya talks about these certain meditations, and a lot of the meditations center around going outside, seeing God's creations, and then connecting God to nature. Because we all can appreciate nature. We all can, I hope we all can. I know it's easier accessible in Montana. And I appreciate it so much. But the cool part is us connecting that experience of nature and connecting it to God. And you've brought out in me my love for nature so much. And I always joke around like I'm younger than you, but I am like, well, I want to be like, I have to keep up with you. And the things that you do are just, I don't know, so amazing. And it's like always like a goal. Like I want to be able to do a backpacking trip. I want to be able to ski hike up a mountain and ski down in theory. I don't know if I really want to do it. We have some good ski stories. We should share some of those. Paula took me skiing in the beginning when I was learning, and I'm still a beginner because I haven't done it in many years, but we have some good
fun
crashing, screaming down the mountain experiences.
For sure.
Yeah. So using nature to recharge and refuel is really profound. But also what I love about that is that anybody can do that. You know how like in this day and age, we are inundated with wellness direction. And there's so much coming at us from all different perspectives and all different methods. And you do this and do that and take this supplement and do that. And what really I've learned from you is that so much of how we can kind of be our best self and feel the best is already in us and isn't already in our control, or we already have access to and doesn't cost any money.
That was that I wanted to throw in there is it's not expensive.
Yeah. Like finding your breath.
Mm-hmm.
You have your breath.
Exactly. You find a body of water and you sit next to it.
Yeah. And I think I'm still learning that and embracing that. I'm a person that like really does get really anxious around wellness because I'm a person that gravitates towards wanting to be healthy and wanting to do all the most optimal ways to live life and eat the best and exercise. And I gravitate towards that. And then I find myself in the wellness space feeling very overwhelmed because it sometimes feels like no matter how much you're doing and no matter how good you are at it, there's always something else. And there's always something that's going to kill you around the corner, this toxic thing and that thing. And don't eat this and don't eat that. And it feels very stressful. And it's almost like, well, it's never going to be good enough. So why do it at all? And what I've learned with you, and we'll get to the Ayurveda piece, is first of all, so much of it is innate and like go back to the basics. So much of it is like stripping away all that stuff and going back to the basics, and also in moderation. And that is something that I think, I speak for myself, but I think a lot of people feel very overwhelmed around. So what would you say to people who are in this modern world, and we're living in a modern world, but also are kind of feeling the effects of the modern world, and we want to live an optimal life?
It's hard.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really hard not to get caught up in it. The idea is to optimize who you are, be your optimal self.
Mm-hmm.
And the basics really are sleeping, eating, and exercising. And whether you get 100 grams of protein or 50 grams of protein is less important than whether you are super stressed about how much protein you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the stress is the silent killer. And that's more, so to be less stressed and bring more joy into your life and be more yourself. Those things have a much more lasting effect, I believe, on your well-being than counting your macros.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And then there's some other real basic things, but that I think would be my byline for this generation that is, you wake up and you spend an hour on your phone scrolling, and you get so many mixed messages, and you could spend hundreds of dollars.
Thousands.
Mm-hmm.
It's so overwhelming. And it's really helpful when you have people in your life that can remind you of who you are. You know, when sometimes you get lost in your reality and yourself, and you need that like really good friend to be like, no, this is like, go back to you. Like, this is who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that to be a really helpful someone to like hold up the mirror and be grounding. So you do the yoga. You're here in Bozeman. How long ago did you move to Bozeman?
I moved to Bozeman in 1994. So 32. Is that 32 years? I think that's 32 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. And you come for graduate school.
I did.
And you stayed here because you loved it, or you stayed here because it just happened?
So one of the reasons I chose to come to graduate school here is firstly that I got a position here as a research assistant,
Oh.
but also because I felt like it was a place I could live. It
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of my main needs as a place to live. And then when I finished graduate school, I noticed there was nobody really doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I felt like it was a really good place to put out my shingle and start working.
So how did you start off?
I started off doing some massage work because I did my schooling in the summer of first year of graduate school.
Yeah.
For massage. So while I was in graduate school, I did some massage just to keep kind of practicing. Once graduate school was over, I began doing sort of putting up flyers basically and
Mm-hmm.
teaching yoga classes and doing massage. So those were the two pieces. Out of my apartment, I was living in a small one-bedroom studio apartment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I would do classes of 4 students. And then when I outgrew my apartment, I rented a small space, which I still rent, to teach group yoga classes. And as my massage client base grew, I started to do more and more of the therapeutic work, and then proceeded to then teach teachers.
Right.
Or I actually did teacher trainings for yoga as well.
Tell me about the specific genre or type of yoga that you are called to, because I think there's so much different yoga experiences out there. And there's a lot of yoga that is modernized or
Sure.
not original. And I want to hear like the way that you practice yoga, because I think it's so important to hear and understand like what's out there and what you're getting with each type of yoga.
Yeah. So the type of yoga that I teach and was trained primarily in is from the lineage of TKV Desikachar. He is no longer with us. He was the son of Krishnamacharya. Krishnamacharya was also the teacher of Iyengar and Patabi Joyce, so he's a pretty famous teacher. This type of yoga is sometimes called Vini yoga, Vini yoga. It's well known as a therapeutic lineage. In other words,
Mm,
widely used both for physical injuries as well as spiritual and emotional and psychological
injuries.
therapies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does that look like in practicality? Like how is it different than the yoga class you're getting at the gym?
Right. So the idea is that it's usually done or primarily done one-on-one
Mm-hmm.
because that's how we do therapy, right? We really look at the person. And we use all 8 limbs. So the yoga tradition has 8 limbs. It has the yoga poses, which is what most of us think of when we think of yoga, which are called asana. It has pranayama, which is breath work. In this lineage, we also do quite a lot of chanting. There's meditation at various levels of meditation. There's also non-harming in terms of, well, there's something that we call the yamas and the niyamas, which are how we treat ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and how we treat the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all really important tools. They're called the 8 limbs, and they're all important tools in the healing process. So we don't just give poses. We give breath practices, chanting, different kinds of meditation, depending upon the client and what they are bringing
What
to
they
the
need.
table. Right.
So it's a very like holistic, like all-encompassing experience. I know we've talked a lot about when we have our conversations, like when I talk Tanya and Hasidus and you're talking yoga, like we found so many
Similarities.
similarities and values. It's not just about how you can move your body. It's about who you are as a person and how you're showing up, and are your insides matching your outsides, right? Is your inner world the way that you treat your outer world, and how you treat yourself as well as you treat others. I think we think about yoga in the modern world, and we think about a
Calisthenics.
headstand or,
Right.
some cool pose that, is cool to look at. But what I've learned from you and going on the yoga retreats, by the way, the yoga retreats that I go on every year in Mexico is with Paola. It's her yoga retreats. She runs them, she leads them, and they're profound because it's so deep. It's like coming back to yourself, like we spoke about in the beginning. You have to live your, I want to say mission, but it's like every person, your essence, like every person has who they are. And I think what I've learned over the years is when we aren't aligned with who we are, we're doing something that doesn't align with who we are, or we're not able to express who we are as our true self. That's where a lot of disease and unease comes from.
Absolutely. And suffering.
Suffering, right? That's where the suffering, because pain, you're always going to have pain. Pain's part of the world, but it's the suffering
Sure.
that comes from this.
Trying to be something that is not in alignment with your true essence.
So how do you uncover that? What if you don't even know what your essence is? How do you find your essence if you're so lost?
I mean, it depends on the person. Some people don't want to find that. It can be painful.
It's so true.
Right?
Yeah.
I really feel like it's not, I would say it's less than 50% of the world. And this is my own observation, is I think there are quite a number of people who are not really interested in that. I work with people in my studio who come in for, say, ankle pain or foot pain, and help them with their foot, but they are not interested in why they got that pain or where it came from or what it might be linked to, right?
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting because I was talking with a friend just the other day, and we were talking about how there are many people who don't feel the need or the desire to go deeper or understand the layers. And I find that to be, it surprises me every time because I'm like, really? Well, how do you live your, how does that work? But I have to remember that it's true. Not everybody is on that path or wants that. But let's say you do. Let's say you do want that, but you don't know where to start. I mean, if you feel comfortable, to share some of your own experiences because I think that's how you ended up here, right? It's like in your own life experiences, being confronted, being faced with challenges or pain, and it calling you to go beneath the surface and figure this out.
Well, I think asking questions and listening, both as a therapist, when other people come into the studio, the first thing I do is listen, 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 listen. When they're done talking, then I start asking questions. And then I think as a client myself,
as
or
your
as
own
a
personal,
patient, right, as my own personal, it's finding someone who does listen to the point where I feel like they know me and who asks great questions. So it's the same thing. And I'd say that's also why you're such a great friend to me, because you do both of those things.
Yeah, we do that for each other for sure. I literally called Paola the other day. I stepped on the scale. Bad idea. And I freaked out. And I call Paola, I'm crying, and I'm everything. It's I'm never gonna get to my goal. I'm never gonna be good enough. It's so hard. And it's just I was able to do that with you, and you were able to hold that space and remind me of okay, who are you? And what is your goal? And what are you trying to accomplish? And also okay. And it's okay to have a goal, and it's okay to want to be a certain way, but holding that space, I think that is, it is so integral. Cause honestly, I told you, I'm I don't even need you to say anything, honestly. I just need to be able to say.
This voicemail.
It was a voice note, literally.
It was a voice note. It was not.
I didn't even call. I just voice noted. I verbally diarrhea, and I'm okay, I feel better now.
Call me back. That's fine.
That's fine. Oh my gosh. Was there a pivotal point in your life that made you face like who you needed to be? What we're exactly talking about? Like you need to live your essence. Like was there something that happened or it doesn't have to be like a specific situation or experience, but was there something in your life that kind of woke you up and was like, I need to live my essence or I need to figure this out?
I'd say there were two.
Okay.
Can I say that?
Yes.
Okay.
There could be 10. I don't, and I think in different stages of our life, it keeps happening over and over again, right?
Yeah. But I'd say there were two. Okay, three. But I'll tell you about two
Okay.
main ones. The first one that always comes to mind is when I had that injury when I was in my 20s, my early 20s, when I was hit by the car. I was hit by a car. I was on my bike. I got hit by a car, and I had this injury that really made me reconsider my choices in terms of being somewhat reckless athletically, as
Mm,
well as my career choice to be a mountain guide and to rely on my body for
mm.
work. So that was sort of one shift where I had to really reassess. I think that being a mountain guide was not a great choice for me on a few different levels, and it was sort of God's way of throwing a brick in my way so that I would sort of re-steer myself,
Rethink it. Yeah.
rethink it. I'd say the next one was a really brutal relationship that I had in my 30s that made me reassess the type of people
Mm.
I surround myself with. And then the third one was 4 years ago when my mother died. And I had to really, really think hard about my own mental health.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Right. Like we said, like just because you did it once doesn't mean you have
No,
right. There's layers and stages and we evolve and we change and we grow. And there's going to be probably something every couple years or every decade that's going to like shake you up and remind you that you have to go back to your essence.
sort of different parts of your essence.
Right. Because there's like layers. Okay. You figured that part out
Yeah, right.
regarding relationship, regarding yourself, regarding, your health. And I think that's an important like realization of life. Like I sometimes think like, I figured that out already, or I've done that work already. And it's never done. There's always this,
No,
it's always this,
totally. Yes.
but this, okay. So starting from the first kind of realization, you have this injury, you have to kind of face your maybe mortality of like, I have to not test the limits as much. You said you were like reckless and you were doing extreme outdoorsy, sporty things. And it was like a realization of like, maybe I need to be more careful. Maybe I need to value my life a little bit more. Where was it coming from?
Yeah, it's sort of complicated. I don't know
Yeah.
if it was actually, it was more a sense of needing to be a little bit more in my body
Yeah.
when I'm doing things.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
really easy to disassociate from your body when you're doing something really intense and like you're
Yeah.
in your brain and so this can cause all kinds of, injuries or, in this particular case, I was hit by a car, so it really
Right.
wasn't
It wasn't your
my fault.
fault.
It wasn't
Yeah.
doing anything in
Yeah.
particular, but it did make me reevaluate all kinds of, the athletic piece.
I love that nuance that you focused on as being in your body because I think it's so easy to disassociate. And I think we do that all the time for survival, whether it's when you're doing something physical or even in your day-to-day life. Like I remember talking to my therapist about Pesach. Pesach's coming up and just feeling so overwhelmed and just kind of being all over the place. And one of the things and I've said this before, but one of the things he would tell me is like whatever you're doing in that moment is be in your body and be present in it. So if you're peeling potatoes, like feel your feet on the ground, feel like be in the present moment. It feels so dumb to like have that be a huge piece of advice. It's like, that's what you're going to tell me, but it's really the biggest thing. And it's the hardest thing. Like remembering to come back into your body, I think is one of the hardest things.
And the biggest giveaway is if you're not breathing or if you're breathing really shallowly. So again, the link between the body and the mind is always the breath, right?
Mm.
So that's why I always say,
Say more about the breath. Say more.
It's very common when I'm working with someone on the table and I'm working with them and say I'm working on an injury. They were in a bike wreck and whatever. And so I'm working on an injury and there's some trauma in the injury and they stop breathing as I'm working. And so then I back off and I say, okay, come back to your breath and only let me go as deep as you can keep your breath moving. And so a lot of times what that means is they have to stop talking and really focus on their breath. And then the minute they stop breathing, they say, okay, that's enough. Like that's too deep, or you're too close to the injury site. And so that's sort of how we should lead our lives. We should lead our lives as fast or as slow as our breath is capable of holding space.
So it comes back to the breath.
Always comes back to the breath.
If you're not breathing, then you are not in your body.
Correct.
How many times have you told me to breathe on the table?
A lot? A few times. A few times.
A few times. I can't even tell you how many times Paul's like, breathe, breathe, breathe. I'm a big holder breather. Like for the longest time, I didn't even notice or realize it until it kept you brought it to my attention of like, you're not breathing. I'm like, oh, you're right.
You're tapping your foot, but you're not breathing.
Yeah.
Remember all the tapping of the foot?
Yeah. I still do that. I'm getting better though.
Yeah.
I'm getting much better, but not breathing. If you're not breathing, you are not in your body.
Correct.
Such a good
Of course you're breathing,
tool.
right? You're alive. So people would be like,
right.
Right? Like, what are you talking about? Of course I'm breathing. If I weren't breathing, I wouldn't be alive. We're talking about a breath that's full, that's deep, that you can feel the beginning and the end of, not a tiny little breath that's like
minimal.
imperceptible.
Yeah.
Like you should see the chest move.
Yeah. Wow.
People would say, well, you should see the belly move. The belly moves on the exhale, the chest moves on the inhale, at least in our tradition.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the first step was realizing, okay, I need to be in my body more. And that's where it brought you to yoga.
That's right. I was already doing yoga, but I was doing yoga on the mat. I wasn't doing yoga in my everyday life, right? So that's the difference. Is people go to the yoga studio, they do yoga once a week, they do it for an hour. But the idea is to eventually do yoga 24/7. You're doing it every minute of every day. It's how you act, it's how you think, it's how you breathe, and it's how you move, right? So you do it off the mat too. People say to me, how often do you do yoga every day? My answer is yes. Mm-hmm. Do I do poses every day? Not anymore. Mm. But I'm doing yoga every day. Mm. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I don't think people see it like that. So it's a very important kind of perspective shift of like, what actually is this? Oh, so, okay. So the second kind of coming to moment was
the relationship.
Yes.
Choice that I made that was, yes, very difficult relationship.
What did it make you confront and do at that point?
So it made me confront a little bit what we were talking about, which was when we were having the conversation about not everybody is interested in growth. Mm-hmm. This particular person that I was in relationship with, who died of alcoholism, he was an alcoholic, which I didn't understand because that was not something I grew up with. So I got sort of caught up in that.
Yeah.
But he would say to me, the biggest difference between you and I is that you're a do-gooder and I'm not. So the understanding that there are lots of different types of people out there.
Yeah.
Like really a lot of different kind of people, like, people that aren't, I already knew that there were people that weren't intellectual, right? Even though that's what I grew up with. I did not know that there were people who were malicious by intent. Even though I grew up with a Holocaust survivor as a father, he would always say, people are bad. People are bad. Really? And I resisted. And I said, people are not bad. People become bad. And I realized after that he's right. Some people are bad. Yeah. And some people are so different from my value system or my morals that no matter how much we can talk, no matter how much we can love each other, no matter how intimate we are, it's not a good match as a person.
Yeah.
It was a hard realization of humanity. It was a It was
Yeah.
a sort of a human condition.
Yeah. And it's so hard. And did it make you kind of reflect and decide on what were your values and like made you maybe more intentional about who you wanted to surround yourself by? And like, okay, well, what are my values and who are the type of people that I align with?
Interestingly, I think it didn't not necessarily do that.
Okay.
I don't think I was ever very clear about that. I think
Yeah.
even though I think that's what I said, if I were to retract, I would say that what it did do is make it clear who I am.
Right.
Yes, I
Yeah.
am a very loyal person.
Yeah.
If you're my friend for life. That's
Yeah.
just how I function. I'm loyal. I love deeply. I have certain values and certain morals. Like it really clarified sort of the depth of who I am.
Hmm.
And then I started thinking about, well, what's a good match for that?
Yeah. It's amazing what we get confronted by to face and to learn and to grow. Like I see that in my life all the time. Like the certain trajectory that my life took or the obstacles that I faced and what that forced me to understand about myself and to kind of grow as a person. And it's sometimes interesting to think about like, okay, well, if I didn't have those life experiences, who would I be? Like sometimes I think about that. So the third, you lost your mother
September of 22. So it'll be 4 years in September.
almost 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And that was devastating. What was that next process, that next confrontation like?
So, this one's the hardest. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's the
Most recent.
most recent.
Yeah.
My mother and I, for better or for worse, are quite similar.
Yeah.
And she died of her own hand um, at the age of 89. And there were mental health issues. There
Pieces.
were a
Yeah.
lot of pieces there. She had
Yeah.
lost my father 5 years prior. And so it really made me think a lot about the pieces that led to, the isolation from COVID and how that
Mhm.
affected her,
Yeah.
um, who I think basically was an extrovert who became an introvert because she was married to an introvert. And
That's fascinating, by the way.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so I think a lot about, my desire to be introverted and how I do have an extroverted side and just, what does it mean to take care of your own mental health at
Yeah.
a deeper level, which is something that, of course, I've been thinking about my entire life,
Yeah.
but thinking of at a deeper level, sort of at the postmenopausal stage,
Yeah.
is a different stage of life. So,
Yeah. And having to navigate and confront all the emotions and the complications that come along with an experience like that, it's just like it's so raw. It's so, you feel so exposed and like how to put the pieces back together and who are you and what am I? It's like it shakes everything up. You started Ayurveda school before your mother passed, no?
yes, I started in January of that year. So I started Ayurveda school in January of 1922. 2022, yeah, and she died that, September. Mhm.
What made you be inspired to take on yet another piece? Like you're already a yoga master, you are a biomechanics, alternative physical therapist, helping a ton of people in their physical body. And then I remember like you started to get these little like calling to go to the next level and to do more.
Mhm.
When did that start? Where did that come from?
I think I was starting to get intellectually a little bit.
Bored?
That would be a good word. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
bored or just
Not stimulated.
yeah, I needed something to sink my teeth into, and I did some
Mhm.
workshops, and I did some different things, and I also was feeling like there was maybe 10 or 15% of my clients who did not seem to be getting better, and I felt like there was, a physiology piece that I was missing.
Mm.
Something that was more sort of internal that I did not have the skill set to really work with. And Ayurveda was the next thing that something that I'd always been interested in that is not something I could learn on my own, super complicated, very ancient form of medicine from India and has the roots in the same texts that yoga has. So I felt like it was just the obvious next step.
So there you go. And you do this. You started kind of in middle of COVID. Does that make sense?
It was like on the tail end.
Yeah, the tail end. So you decide you're going to Ayurveda school, and it's not in Bozeman, right? It's in California, Santa Cruz
Mountains.
Santa Cruz Mountain, back to your roots in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
That's right.
And you're full on in school, back and forth, and you're doing it. You have some is remote, but you're going to Santa Cruz once a month?
Every month. So every month for 2.5 years, I went for 5 days. So basically I'd fly out on a Wednesday and come home Sunday midnight. Still did my full practice. So I didn't really cut back on my practice much. And then we had online school, I think we had like 15 hours, 30 hours a week between homework and online school on top of the going to Santa Cruz. So I did that for, I think it was 2.5 years. Mm-hmm.
How did you do it?
Crazy. It was crazy.
It was crazy.
Super crazy.
You give a little bit of a translation of what Ayurveda is, but for someone who doesn't know anything about Ayurveda, how would you describe it?
So it's a medical system that is used widely in India. So they have hospitals. It has all the forms that we have in Western medicine, pediatrics, OBGYN, surgery, orthopedics, everything. It looks at the body in a completely different model than the Western medicine does. There's this idea that everything in the universe is comprised of the 5 elements: air, ether, fire, water, and earth. And that includes herbs. It includes humans. It includes anything. So, for instance, you, Chavie, and myself, we are comprised of a certain percentage of those 5 elements. And you are a unique template of those 5 elements. And according to those 5 elements, then you are more or less susceptible to certain diseases, whether you live in line with those 5 elements or not. And that's sort of a cursory, very baseline.
I always wonder, and I kind of get this question a lot too, is Chinese medicine is very similar.
Very similar.
Ayurveda would be Indian, but it has a lot of overlap and a lot of similarities, and kind of looks at the body from the same premise.
So it's very similar. Yes, there are books that are written on the similarities. Some of the Ayurvedic practitioners would say that the Chinese, for instance, traditional Chinese medicine came out of Ayurveda, but then ECM people would say that Ayurveda came out of that. It basically rose at a very similar time in history.
Yeah,
is my understanding. So they're very compatible, I guess. Yeah. They're very similar.
It's basically the Eastern medicine view of the body.
It's not the same view. They don't have the same roadmap.
No.
They
don't do the whole cheat. Isn't the
They do have the 5 elements, but their 5 element theory is very different.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And they have metal and wood. So it's this is my understanding. I'm not a TCM practitioner.
Yeah.
But the little bit that I did as a patient.
Yeah. And like acupuncture would fall under Chinese medicine?
Yes. And so in Ayurveda, we have marma points. So there are also points, but we don't use needles. We use massage and pressure on the marma points.
So interesting. So you study Ayurveda, and you now have started to integrate that into your practice.
Yeah.
And what do you notice? How has that affected how you practice and how you help people?
It opens up a whole nother avenue and a whole nother door. And I think that it allows me to work with illness and other issues that can sometimes underlay, here I am again, not totally sure of my English. It can be a base from which people can get injured.
Yeah.
On any number of levels.
Okay, so I would love to hear, like, there are these different categories. People fall into these different categories in Ayurveda, and I think it'd be very interesting for people to hear, like, what are those categories and what are some of the characteristics of each of those categories and how it plays out in how somebody even looks, how somebody operates, how somebody feels. And you could use me as an example. I give full permission.
Yeah. Different from me. So it'd be like, So I think what you're talking about is the three,
The doshas.
the doshas.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So if you have a person, for instance, whose primary elements, remember we talked about the 5 elements, whose primary elements are air and ether, meaning that of those 5 elements, they are primarily, or they have a large amount of air and ether in their system. They will be called a primarily Vata, V-A-T-A, constitution. And Vata is a Sanskrit word. So they will have a primarily Vata constitution. Vata person is typically the kind of person that you see who is quite small boned, thin, lithe. They gain and lose weight. Well, they gain weight very not easily. It's difficult for them to gain weight.
Rats to that. So sad for them.
They tend to be quite creative, spiritual. They are hard to pin down. They tend to be a little bit more airy. They don't really like to stick to a schedule. They might be night owls, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to look at, say, they have a tendency towards very irregular bowel movements. So they may be constipated one day and then runny the next. That's something that we would find. And they're very highly mobile. Then the next dosha that we can talk about is the dosha that is primarily fire with some water. And this is the Pitta dosha, P-I-T-T-A, Pitta dosha. And this Pitta dosha is sort of mid-size, can be muscular, may gain weight, may lose weight, sort of in the middle track there, and tends to be, when ungrounded, will tend towards a fiery personality, maybe turn towards anger. They tend to be more entrepreneurial. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Tend to be intelligent. They have typically very high forehead. They often wear glasses. They turn white-haired very quickly, like very young or bald. And so that is sort of a Pitta type personality. They are the heart of metabolism. So if you think of fire, you think metabolism. And there's lots more that's involved in the Vata and the Pitta. Obviously, I'm just giving you what comes to mind sort of very briefly. And then the third dosha is the Kapha dosha, K-A-P-H-A. And Kapha dosha is primarily earth and water. And they tend to be sort of the grounded, slower moving. So where Vata was very fast and Pitta is very determined, Kapha is very slow. They tend to gain weight quite easily and lose weight very slowly. They have a larger bone structure. They are loving, compassionate. They are the building block of everything. They are the fluid in your joints to keep them nice and cushioned. And when they are imbalanced, can lead to some lethargy and some withdrawal and that sort of thing. So there are diseases that come with all of these 3 when they're imbalanced. When they are balanced, they all have amazing positives. They all have what we would call negatives if they're imbalanced.
From my understanding, the point is that when there's something going wrong or haywire in your body, whether it's emotional or physical, that indicates an imbalance.
Yes.
That is your body saying, like, something in my system is imbalanced. Is it my kapha? Is it my air? Is it my pitta? Is it my fire? Is it my vata, my earth, right? And something is imbalanced that's causing you to feel unwell or to have a challenge.
Yes. You said it backwards.
I said it backward. Okay, so correct me.
Listeners get confused.
Yeah.
That vata is air, ether, and kapha
Okay. Yeah.
is earth. Yeah.
Earth.
Okay.
So from my understanding, because I've been working with you and I've been embracing the system in such a big way, every person has their
Birth
dosha,
constitution.
their birth constitution.
Right.
And like we talked about full circle, like we need to live our essence.
Yes.
And this is very much aligned with that. You have a constitution which plays out in your personality, which plays out in your physical body, which plays out in your mental, emotional health.
Exactly.
The point is to live your essence and to be aligned in all of those areas. When something is off, there's something that's out of alignment. So Ayurveda is a very helpful tool in all fronts to get yourself back into alignment. And oftentimes when you're physically out of alignment, you're probably also suffering a little bit mentally, emotionally out of alignment. And it's all connected. So let's use me, for example. So my dosha is, and you usually have like we all have everything, obviously, and we have like a main and a secondary. And also, from my understanding, is that you can be a certain dosha, you can have a certain constitution, but something else is out of alignment. Doesn't have to be, you know what I mean? So, for example, share a little bit about what you discovered about me.
So, Chavie is primarily Pitta dosha with Kapha secondary. And what does that mean? That means some people can have all three doshas in equal amounts. This is very rare.
Yeah.
Most people have a predominant dosha and then one that falls slightly behind. And so Chavie is primarily Pitta, secondarily Kapha. So that means that she's very bright. She speaks quickly and
has a lot of thoughts
and clearly. And that's Pitta. And then the Kapha is she's very loving and compassionate. She's a loyal friend. I can speak that from experience. And there is a little bit of the weight issue that she had mentioned earlier.
Right. The freak out of like, it's so easy for me to gain weight and so hard to lose it.
Right.
How do you determine somebody's dosha?
So when somebody first comes to me, we do an hour and a half intake. Everything from did you have any childhood diseases to are there things that run in your family in terms of diseases to looking at her tongue to taking the pulse to what are your bowel movements like? Have they always been that way? To what are your, if it's a female, how many pregnancies? What were they like? What is your period like? All of that gives information on somebody's birth or primary dosha.
And the pulse isn't just like you, there's many layers to this pulse.
So each wrist, meaning you've got on the right wrist, you have 7 layers. And at each layer, you have 3 pulses. So each wrist has 21 pulses.
Wow. And that helps you determine, and also what's off balance. But you can tell that by a pulse too, right?
So if you become an amazing reader of the pulses, you can actually detect all the different organs and see if there's anything happening. Now, at the level that I'm practicing with my schooling, what I can tell from the pulse is what your birth constitution is from the pulse and what your current constitution. And that is what tells me a little bit what's imbalanced. In other words, in a balanced person, the birth constitution never changes, and it is the same as the current constitution. If somebody's imbalanced, the current constitution will feel different than the birth constitution.
Yeah. And what can you tell from the tongue? I always find that so fascinating.
Any number of things.
Like if the tongue is white, what does that mean?
So if the tongue is white, it's a couple of different things. One is that there's ama, and ama is that toxic sludge that we have inside our body that clogs the channels. And that can happen when somebody eats a lot of old food that's processed, what we call sort of dead food with no prana. It also can mean that this person just had an ice cream. So it's high kapha. So white tongue is a lot of kapha. So for instance, say I go travel and I go visit someone who eats a lot of dairy and a lot of sugar. then, and I have no control over that, and that's what we're eating, then I can come home with a white tongue. But then I go back to my diet, which is less dairy and less sugar, and it'll come back to its normal pink.
So what are some of the other things you can see? Like, is the tongue shape matter? Is like the color, like ridges?
Shape for sure. So you can tell if someone sticks their tongue out, the shape can tell you if it's kapha, vata, or pitta. And if there's tremor on the tongue, that can tell us that you're vata imbalanced. Tremor meaning like a little shake. If you have ridges, like teeth marks, that can either be internal swelling or it can be malabsorption. There's little red dots, and that can be too much pitta.
Too much fire.
Too much fire. Or a red tip means that you're burning the candle at both ends. So those are just a few different things that you can see.
But it's fascinating to me that the tongue can be such a window into what's going on.
It's an extension of your intestines.
Oh.
It's what you would see if you looked in your intestines.
I didn't know that.
Well, it's the final, think of your, right?
Wait a second. This is like a aha moment for me right now. What?
A window into your insides. It's what you would see with a microscope if you, yeah.
And so what's fascinating to me is that this is considered alternative.
Right.
Because if it's a window into your insides and this is what an extension of your intestines, like, how is this not something that's mainstream? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
Yeah. So let's say somebody comes, for example, for myself, like there's skin acne. I'm dealing with acne and headaches or whatever. And I come to you and you see like what my constitution is. You see what's going on. Basically what you're doing is you're understanding what's off balance and what's the next step.
So the big piece, sometimes the hardest piece, is to find out, if we can, as quickly as possible, the causative factor. So you're coming to me for acne. I know your base constitution. I know your imbalance. And then I have to come up with a working hypothesis before I can treat you.
Right.
You know, it's like you have to take the x-ray, you have to take the MRI, working hypothesis, torn meniscus. Okay, let's do whatever we need to do to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right. So working hypothesis, you're pitta kapha and you have acne. So then we need to start working with your, what we would call the channel that works with the blood. Yes. The channel, in your case, it would be with the blood, because it's the blood that has to do with the acne, which has to do with the pitta.
It's so interesting because in Ayurveda, so very much is connected to like herbs and that kind of supplementation. But before we even get there, I remember for like the first 6 months, we didn't even do anything with herbs. It was a very much, which is what I think is accessible to everybody, very much lifestyle.
The way that I was trained, and also the way that I choose to practice, because it's what I believe in, is that we first work with lifestyle and nutrition, because everything you put in your body, whether it's a TV show or the light or the conversation you're having or the food or the drink, all of that is being ingested and has a certain effect on your system. Does that make sense? So if you choose to drink soda pop, that has one effect. If you choose to drink warm water with lemon, that has a different effect. So if you choose to talk with a friend who pumps you up, it has one effect. If you choose to speak with a friend who tends to put you down, that has a different effect. So again, we have to really dive deep into lifestyle and nutrition and clean those up before we can start to think about supplementing with herbs, because the herbs aren't going to do anything if everything else is out of whack.
And for everyone's different constitution, there's certain things I feel like are universal. The types of foods that are, well, I guess there are different types of food for different doshas, but the fact that, you know, we want to eat less processed and, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of universal. The fact that we need sleep, maybe different amounts of sleep, people need different amounts of sleep. There's certain things that are like building blocks, but then out of those, it's very tailor-made to who you are as a person and what your constitution is and what's off balance. So for someone like me, one of the biggest things that I learned from you, and I would love to hear, your input from that, but I learned that for my constitution, for me to process and have things move through my body and not get stuck, whether that's an emotion, whether that's something physical, whether, anything, is I need a certain amount of movement. And that certain amount of movement is very high. I need a lot more movement than I was doing. And finding ways to get that movement in was very important.
Mm-hmm.
And you told me, and I almost can say this verbatim, but maybe, not exactly, but it's like moving your body is disease prevention for you. If you don't want to get sick, and if you don't want to get stuck emotionally, if you don't want your emotions to affect you in a deep way that ends up making you sick, the way to do that is that you need to move your body a certain amount every day.
Yes.
That was a really big shift for me. I've always exercised. I go to the gym. Like, these are not new concepts for me, but the correlation of, and especially when you told me, like, you specifically with your constitution needs to move things through your body in a physical way. So your exercise is not necessarily about losing weight. It's about keeping your body in flow.
Right.
And that is something that it's no supplementation. It's not revolutionary in that sense, but it's very core.
I wanted to add that I think that for some of the listeners, you might be saying, well, yeah, Westerners say that, right? That's part of the Western model.
Mm-hmm.
The current Western model is, I believe, is exercise as much, as hard, and as as possible.
Right.
And that's not what Ayurveda says. So
Mm-hmm.
lest people get the wrong impression of why I said that to you,
Mm-hmm.
there's an understanding that, for instance, a kapha person needs to do their tendency is going to be to either not exercise or exercise very slowly. What they really need is to rev up their metabolism and to exercise fast and harder than they like. A pitta
Mm-hmm.
person has, at its imbalance, will become angry and frustrated. And when those emotions start coming up a lot, then typically what needs to happen, they have a lot of fire. So fire needs to move,
Mm-hmm.
right? So pitta people need to be very disciplined in their approach to
Movement.
movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not balls to the wall, and it's not super slow. It needs to have some intensity to it. Whereas Vata people who move constantly and never settle down do the best with slow movement, like really awesome yoga practice. I mean, yoga's great for everybody, obviously. But
Right.
so those are the different kinds of movement that you would give to different people. And you being a Pitta Kapha, the thing that I always knew about you was that A, you're an amazing athlete, and B, you didn't take advantage of that, and C, it would really help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's so important because it is nuanced. And what you told me, because I was going to the gym twice a week and doing mostly weights, lifting weights. And you told me that the days that you aren't going to the gym, you need to get movement. And for me, the most accessible thing for me to do, especially in the winter, is I have a treadmill. He said, get on the treadmill, start slow, right? Start 15 minutes, work your way up, and make that part of your non-negotiable schedule. Like, you need to find time to move your body every day and also push it a little. Don't just stroll. You got to break a sweat. I have a very hard time breaking a sweat. It doesn't come easy to me. So I have to work quite hard to break a sweat. And so it is these little things that start to kind of come together, which start to affect lifestyle, starts to put things in balance. And what happens when you're doing the stuff, you add the stuff in, you're adapting the exercise. And of course, there was adjustments in, Ayurveda with food and amounts of food. Like, that's also very particular. And then you're doing really well. And then you are struggling and you either hit a wall or you aren't able to keep up or you're losing stamina, what happens then?
It's like all habits. Any habit is hard to form, and we run the risk of quote unquote falling off the wagon. So when that happens, depending on the person, some people come in for a half-hour reboot every 2 weeks. Some people come in once a month. Some people
Mhm.
come in every 6 weeks. So we can talk about how they're doing, if they need some other, sometimes it's just a way of looking at what needs to happen and why. So for a lot of people, they just need to understand why they're doing it,
Mhm.
and then it gets easier. And then over time, you start to notice that you feel better.
Mhm.
And usually that's pretty much enough
Motivation.
to motivation. Yeah. Or you fall off the wagon and you start feeling worse again.
Yeah.
And then you get back on the wagon, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And again, the idea is the other very big difference, I think, with Western, and not that I want to create this sort of big, huge schism or chasm between the two, because they do go hand in hand in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
is small steps.
Mhm.
You make very small shifts. I don't try to throw everything at a person when they come to see me. It's like, okay, let's try these two things. Too much? Okay, let's try one thing. Let's try this one thing. And then they come back 3 weeks later and they're like, wow, I did this one thing. I went to bed at 10 instead of 11 every night. And wow, my mornings are so much better. Because in Ayurveda, we really try to get people to go to bed by 10. And so it's like, great. Now, do you think you could? And then I change one other thing.
Yeah.
And then they get a month to play with that. So depending on the person, we may change one small thing so that they can form that habit before we try something else.
It's so true. And I want to just spend a minute here for a second because I had a recent experience as part of I called you, but before then it was just had a routine that was working for me really well. And then I traveled or this, and all of a sudden I felt like my regular practice of however long I was doing on the treadmill or whatever I was doing was feeling very difficult. And it was taking so much effort and I was starting to resent it. And I was like, I don't want to go on the treadmill. Like before I was like, motivated and it felt good and now it's like I'm dreading it and I'm struggling. And so I came for my check-in, which I do, and the way that you guided me was really profound and really was so helpful. What you told me is, okay, first of all, we cycle. There's times in your life and things are harder and easier. And when you are struggling with your current practice or what you're doing, go back to baseline. Go back to where you started. And I don't know why to me that is so like revolutionary and so like I would never think to do that because it feels like you're going backwards. It feels bad to go backwards. But it was so comforting to be like, okay, like you took out your notes and you're like, where did we start? Now you're doing, let's say you're doing 30 minutes on the treadmill on a 10 incline, wearing a weighted vest. This is where you are now. Where did we start?
We started at 15 minutes flat. Exactly.
15 minutes flat. And you're like, go back to 15 minutes flat. It'll be a piece of cake. You'll start to love it again. And you start again to build from there. So part of me is like, oh my gosh, I'm starting all over again. Like it feels like you're starting all over again. But when you look at it from a different perspective, it's so empowering because it's like, okay, like this is hard for me now. Go back. I feel like we forget that we can go back go back to baseline, go back to the basics. And I think in general in life, it's such a good life lesson. Like when things are feeling hard and when things are feeling challenging and difficult, go back to where you started? Shore up that foundation and go from there.
And that's something that I would say that I learned in my practice from injury rehabilitation. I work with injuries so much. For 30 years, I've been working with people that are injured. And so you physically injured, right? So
Yeah.
you help them with their injury. And then how do you get them to be that amazing triathlete again? These are high-end athletes and they have been injured for a year. They were slated for surgery and you just got them working, you just got them running again. So how do they start running back up to the level that they were running before from the beginning?
It's such a hard thing. Do you find in your own experiences, because you've had some injuries and having just a few,
Yes.
um, do you find that like it can mess with your head though, being like, oh my God, I can't do the things I used to do. Am I ever going to get there? And you start to kind of spiral. How do you unspiral?
Well, I can speak to the latest injury that I had,
Yeah.
which I think you get better with every injury,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or with every, whether it's an injury or a falling off a wagon.
Mm-hmm.
But I can speak for myself from this last injury where I had a fracture in my leg from skiing. And I hired a PT that I went to go see once a week, even though I could have done it myself, likely, because I needed someone in order to stay out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
I needed another professional to tell me what to do so that I didn't think through anything. He was like, no, you can't do that. Yes, you can do this. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I was cleared, then I was on my own and I had to keep journals and I had to keep reminding myself how far I'd come.
So huge mental game.
It's a mental game. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. So tying in, because we're going to have to wrap up, but tying in where you started, which was yoga, not started, but this trajectory of living your essence, the yoga, the body work, and the Ayurveda, and how beautifully they work together and they flow. And I remember learning in this last yoga retreat how, because Ayurveda and yoga are so linked, that there's certain yoga poses and certain breath work that can correlate to your specific dosha and your specific constitution, and also help specifically what's off balance.
Yes.
Can you speak to that for a minute? Like, how does that connect?
It's really quite beautiful. This idea that understanding your dosha from birth really opens up this amazing window into knowing your essence. And it's almost like for those of us that are constantly wishing we were, wondering why we're not, which I think is many of us, it helps you understand this is who I am by birth for a variety of reasons, because of my parents, because of the time of day, because of where I was born. And I can fight it, or I can learn to live in harmony with it. Right. Like those are my two options.
Yeah.
And when I'm not living in harmony, so for instance, a kapha person, it does really well with back bends. Like, come on, let's do some back bends. Are they going to want to do back bends? No. They're going to want to move slow and they're going to want to do forward bends because that's very calming and that's what kapha likes. But to balance that constitution, they need to do back bends, which are going to energize their system. Their system
Open them up.
Yeah. Pitta people need twists because that gets that metabolic fire. It kind of calms it. It keeps it stimulated, but calms it down. So it doesn't get out like too high and it doesn't get too low. So they tend to do really well with twists. And then the Vata personalities, let's do some standing hip openers and let's do some forward folds. So if you're looking to balance, now you also may have, like Chavie, a Pitta Kapha person whose tendency is to be Vata imbalanced. Okay, that's like over the top. So to balance out this Vata piece, she needs to do some forward folds.
Right. And this is what I love when you take yoga past the poses and past the beautiful looking, flexible things that you see, is how restorative and how intentional it could be. Like you can tailor your yoga practice to what you're feeling, right? Like if you're feeling very sluggish and slow and you need to energize yourself in the morning, like you're going to do back bends and you're going to do harder poses. And if you're trying to, let's say you're very activated and you're stressed and you're all over the place, you're going to want to do the forward folds and the calming. And let's say you're just whatever, you don't know which way. you don't know. You're just,
right.
you're all over the place. You might need to be doing some twists. So I just really, there's something so beautiful about having these tools, because part of what I do is I have a 5-minute practice that I got from you. And even sometimes I'm like, I could do more. I could do more. You're like, no, 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 no. 5 minutes. And I did fall off the wagon with my 5-minute practice, and I'm back on. But these little things, and it takes 5 minutes. It takes 5 minutes.
And does it help?
And it helps a ton. And it's just these types of what I'm so passionate about is sharing these types of tools that you can have in your toolbox that aren't something you have to buy. Like, like now there's rebounders, and there's vibration plates, and there's all these things you have to buy to do. And honestly, you can do all of these things with your body in your home without having to spend money. Yes, you need some time, you need some willpower, you need some intention, you need to want it, right? Like we said in the beginning, like you need to want to have the quality of life if you're looking for a quality of life.
And some guidance.
Exactly.
That's the tricky part.
Yeah, that's the hard part. So how do people do that? Like, let's say somebody's interested in making these little changes. Like, I'm so lucky because I have you in my life, and I get to just have access to this and to you. But how do other people get access?
Well, there's practitioners.
Yeah.
All over.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of interviewing people and finding someone that meets your needs and your personality. I think that's really key.
Yeah. It is really key. And I just wish for everybody to have someone like you in their life. That's my wish to everybody. Find a Paola. But also just the knowledge. I think the reason why I wanted to also share on the podcast is to know that it's out there, to even know that these are tools that exist, and to know how yoga can be used in a really different way that you might think that it's for, to know that there are alternative ways to look at your body and your health, and to understand. And my biggest thing is to understand about yourself that every person has their unique essence, and finding that and living in alignment with that is truly life-changing.
Truly.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here, Paola, and sharing your wonderful wisdom with all of us.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be part of this.
Okay. Was that amazing or what? Ugh, I love Paolo so much. So honestly, like it's so hard when you have episodes on these like big, vast topics, because they really are just the tip of the iceberg. And there's so much more to delve into. But what comes to mind, especially today, because I love how everything is always connected. Today, I recorded an episode, and one of the topics we discussed was the topic of healing, and healing, when does it come in the way of actually living, and how do you find like the middle ground and balance? Because these days, healing is a full-time job. There's so much coming at us. Everyone has their thoughts and opinions of what's the way to optimize your life. And trust me, I believe in optimization, but we don't have to optimize everything. We also have to live. And what I love about Ayurveda is that it's a whole body, mind, body system. And if you want to be healthy physically, you also really need to be healthy emotionally. And if you want to be healthy emotionally, you know what you need to do? One of the things you need to do is to really like live your life and have fun and enjoy and be grounded and be present. And all of these things are so much easier said than done. But if there's a goal to have, it is to talk about optimize, live your best life. Like, don't forget to live while you heal, because healing is a lifelong journey. Discovering and becoming your best self is a lifelong journey. And that's never going to end. So it's really important that in the process of being our best self and growing, we need to live. We need to live. And what I love about Ayurveda so much is that there's a huge amount of focus on that. So when I go and see Paola and I'm struggling with something like my stomach is hurting and it's off and I'm feeling low energy, like the questions that she asks me are, okay, so when's the last time you went outside and had a walk? How are you feeling? Are you overwhelmed? Are you stressed? Like, what's going on in your life? And of course, there's questions of, okay, what are you putting in your body? But it's not the only thing. And so many times I've gone to Paola, and the thing that she's told me is like, go back to basics, back it up, back it up, back it up. And sometimes healing is taking away things and not necessarily adding things. And I think that's really something that I've been working on, because I am a very balanced person for the most part, but I can also naturally, I like to be really healthy and I like to optimize and I like to do whatever is the latest and greatest thing. And I have to be really careful to remember what's important and to also know that it's never going to be enough. There's always going to be something bigger and better out there. There's always going to be someone who has a better idea or contradicts what you've known, and everything you think you knew goes out the window. That's so stressful to me. Like, oh my gosh, when that happens, oh my gosh. But Ayurveda is ancient wisdom. And if we think about it, yes, we've evolved as humans and we've changed and we need different things, but the core is the same. And when we go back to that ancient wisdom, it is so much about balance. And it was so funny because, gosh, I can't remember if I said this in the interview. So if I did, I'm so sorry. But my husband was learning with my son and he was reading from the Code of Jewish Law. And it was talking about, the section they were reading was talking about the times you should eat and what you should eat for the seasons and all of these, like all of this ancient wisdom that Ayurveda talks about, that Chinese medicine talks about. Guess what? It's like in the Torah. It is when everything is noisy and overwhelming, like when all else fails, go back into what you know to be true. And that has been a really incredible journey for me and constantly always learning. But the biggest takeaway that I'm really into these days is don't forget to live your life. Don't forget to live your life. Don't sacrifice your life for the sake of healing. There needs to be a balance. And of course, even though the prompt this week was all about burnout, which was inspired by the last episode with Amy, it really fits into our conversation right now. So, what is burnout and what is happening when we feel burnt out? And how do we navigate life so we can avoid burnout? And if we happen to stumble into burnout, how do we get ourselves out of it? So I have a bunch of voice notes to share, and I'm really excited to delve into this concept.
Hi there. My name is Chaya Goldberg, and I live on Shlichus in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. My thoughts on burnout are that I wish it would become more normal. That doesn't have to be something that you're embarrassed about, something that you feel you can't speak to a friend about or a member of your family or a spouse. Burnout happens to many more people than you think, and normalizing it will help us to treat it and prevent it. What did I do when I think I would say that I felt the burnout coming really, really, really quick? I kind of put myself in timeout. Never underestimate the power of breathing. Take a deep breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Take a deep breath, remove yourself from the situation, whatever the situation is, and try to figure out what you can do right now to make it better. We're not talking about in 20 years from now or next week or in another month. What can you do right now to make it feel better so that you don't feel like you are being crushed under this stone of burnout? And what do? I take care of me and I do things that make me happy. And it really, really helps. So, I have a joke with the ladies of our community that if you ever see me without my nails painted, something is very wrong. So just take me by the hand and say, Chaya, come, sweetheart, we're going to go to the salon now. Because that makes me happy and it makes me feel like I look put together. It finishes the outfit and it truly puts a smile on my face. Also, if you go get your nails done, guess what? You must sit. You must sit. There's no such thing as standing and getting your nails done. There's no such thing as standing and getting your eyebrows waxed. If you're going to take care of yourself like that, then it has to be sitting down. How would I prevent burnout? I don't know if I have a way to say this will stop burnout from coming. However, when you are able to take care of yourself in a way that makes you happy, again, you, not somebody else, I feel that then you have a koyach in you that morning, like, I took care of myself. I had my coffee. I learned for a few minutes. I called my mother. I called my friend. I filled my cup. And then I feel with that, you're able to face your day.
Okay, I love that. And I love that we know who this is, Chaya. Thank you for sharing. I think, yes, I agree with everything that you said in the sense that, okay, burnout is real. Maybe some people don't believe that burnout is real. I'm not one of those people. I really do think that burnout is a really real thing. I think many people experience it more than we know, because I think people don't necessarily want to share that they are burnt out. What I do want to say is I think there's a difference between being exhausted and burning out. So maybe in a little bit we can tease that out a little bit. But I really like that idea of when you're feeling completely overwhelmed and burnt out, one of the best things that you can do is come to your present. Like, what do you see in front of you? You know how there's a tool where it's like when you're having a panic attack, it's like, okay, name 3 things that you can see, something you can touch, right? Like, get yourself back into your present. Don't worry about past, don't worry about future. Breathing, take a deep breath, and really just focus on what's right in front of you. And I love that. I love that tip about the manicure. Like, I personally hate manicures. Maybe it's because I have to sit, but it is so true. It's like you can't do anything else when you're getting a manicure, like, because you can't even use your hands. You can't even be on your phone. So that is like a really good tip. Like, make something a priority where you cannot be doing anything else besides for stopping and focusing and breathing. So I love that. I love that tip. And as far as preventing burnout, I have a lot to say on that. Maybe I'll come back to that. Let's hear the next voice now.
So for me, the way I experience burnouts is that I feel exhausted all the time. Even if I'm not doing a million things during the day, I just have this constant state of fatigue, of exhaustion, even though like I could be sleeping at night, but usually it comes with insomnia. Like I can't sleep at night, but it's not because I'm working or I'm doing a million things. It's just I can't calm down and I can't achieve inner peace. I just feel very overwhelmed, very stressed, and there's nothing I can do to calm my mind and my body down.
I love that description. It's like, okay, how do you know for her? How does she know that she's in burnout? It's the sense of exhaustion that's not about working too hard or overexerting physically. It's just like this overarching sense of emotional exhaustion, and you can't feel settled, and you can't sleep. You're all over the place. And I think that's a really good description of it, because exhaustion can mean a lot of different things. But when you're burnt out, it's not necessarily related to doing physical activity that you're exhausted in that way. It's like a whole different type of exhaustion.
Hey, Chavie. I hope you're well. I love your question you asked now about burnout. I like reading it. So much comes up for me. And I think it definitely exists. And I think, it's not just working hard, or obviously we need breaks and all of that, of course. But I think for different people, it's different. What I noticed, like about my husband, for example, in our previous shluchas, my husband is super creative. And he was working under someone who was super not creative. And so his creativity was not allowed to like blossom. and it was very, very frustrating. And because his creativity was very squashed and not able to blossom, he felt very, very burnt out after a certain amount of time, of just like kept hitting that kind of like very square, sort of non-creative authority almost, so to speak. And for me, it was very different. For me, I felt big burnout when my abilities were very capped. So when I was like in a very rigid role and I wasn't allowed to go beyond that role, even if I was like being asked, like it was being called for, or I felt like no one else was doing it and I had what to give there, I was not allowed to go beyond this very, very rigid role. And so for me, it was more like my abilities being capped and not being able to like grow and push myself beyond. It's not even like necessarily role. I don't know what the right word is, but for me, it was very much about that. So I feel like I said, for my husband, it was very much about the creativity part. And for me, it was more not being able to stretch myself and push myself and, kind of grow in that way, and had to just kind of stay in like the same monotonous role and abilities that, if we're all moving and growing over time, like, of course, the same thing you're doing 10 years ago is not going to be good for you now, right? Like, you're evolving. So I think burnout definitely exists. And I don't think it's just based on, how hard you work, or, I think when you are like aligned with what you love doing, what you were called for in this world, like your mission and all that, I think that you can get tired and you can take breaks, but you don't experience that burnout. Burnout is when I think you're being squashed in some way and not being able to really like shine your light and to be who you are on this earth. I think that's when real burnout is, like when you're living someone else's truth or someone else's command and you're not living your real truth. And I think that's the difference between just like being tired and needing the break and between real burnout. Anyway, hope you are well. Sending lots of love.
Okay, so this speaks to exactly what I was saying before about the difference between exhaustion and burnout. And I think she said it beautifully. And think about that for a second. Like, if you are not living in alignment, or you are not fulfilling your potential, or you are not able to do the thing that you know you're good at, or is right for you, or is your purpose in this world, it's not going to be good. Like, your mental health is going to suffer. And oftentimes that would lead to burnout. Imagine if you're in a job that isn't playing to your strengths, you feel trapped. You're going to get burnt out really fast. And that is very different than being exhausted. It's a completely different thing. And I am so glad that she brought this to our attention of this tension of a reality that many people face, where they're not living their true selves. They're not living in alignment. They're not tapped into what they're supposed to be doing in this world, and in turn are not thriving. And if it gets really bad, that leads to burnout. So I really think that is something powerful to think about in connection to burnout. And if you're somebody that is struggling with burnout or have struggled with burnout, I wonder if this resonates.
So the hot take about burnout, I don't even know where to start. As a single mother, I feel like this is a really real part of my life. I constantly have to be the everything person. So just being human is kind of hard enough. And then being there for my kids and being the only parent who's there for my kids, and then having to work to be the breadwinner, to manage just all the life admin, as I call it, and just everything. It really gets a lot. And there are so many times in my life that I just want to run away and take a break and recharge. And I know that I need to recharge in order to be a better person and a better mother and just a better human. But at the same time, I can't really do that. I can't just switch off. As my kids get older, I do have more opportunities to have me time. But at the same time, I'm always like, coming up with more ideas of things that I want to do, especially like financially, to be the sole breadwinner for the family. And it's just a lot. Also interesting that you posed, I know you didn't pose this question today, but that I've been reflecting on it today because I've also been reflecting today a lot on nurturing myself as a mother. It's my oldest daughter's 20th birthday today. And just reflecting on the fact that I've been a mother for 20 years, well, really longer because of pregnancy. And most of those years have been single parenting. And I've just been like thinking how, as mothers, we really need to be mothering and nurturing ourselves as well. And going back to the whole burnout thing, like there's just so much expected of us. Some that is not by choice, like we haven't chosen necessarily to have all the burdens that we have on our plate and all the responsibilities and all the challenges that are, kind of put to us by Hashem. And at the same time, we also choose some things to put on, or they come our way and we don't say no. Like I'm giving a shiur in half an hour on Zoom. And I haven't prepared yet, but I'm going to prepare. And I said yes. And at the same time, like there's so many more passions that I want to pursue and things I want to do, but we are limited. Anyway, so I've just been thinking a lot about what fuels me versus what my body can handle. Like I went to bed for a nap at 5:30. I put on a hypnosis meditation and I had a nap for an hour and a half because I could not stay standing. Anyway, my daughter's calling me for bedtime, so those are just some of my thoughts, but I think it's an amazing topic and a really good question, really real, and I'm not sure why your inbox wasn't flooded with so many more responses.
Okay, wow, I have so many things to say. First of all, being a single parent, I cannot even fathom what that must feel like and how fast burnout can happen when you are having to wear all the hats and you don't have a partner for support. I just can't even imagine. And to try to find your way through that and to find ways to nourish yourself and fill your cup when you don't get to really take a break very often or ever. I'm in awe of that. And I don't know. Like I have no words. And I love that the meditation, like, wow, what a boss move. Sometimes you just have to shut it down. Like Chaya said in the first note, like you have to give yourself a timeout. Sometimes you just don't have a choice. And if you don't give yourself the timeout now, you'll be forced to give yourself a timeout and it's going to be so much worse. That's another thing that I want to share is that if you don't make time for yourself or you make time to just function or take a breather, like it will happen for you and it's going to be a whole lot more intense than you want it to be. So I think that's really, really, really important. And I relate with the struggle of wanting to do so many things and having so many things that I want to share and do and accomplish. And also like recognizing that we're human. There's a certain amount of times in the day we also have our responsibilities. And so how do you balance those two things with wanting to do the things that fill you up and wanting to live your life's purpose and do the things that light you up, but also know that you have a limited amount of time. You have all these responsibilities. Maybe you're a mother, maybe you're a wife, maybe you're a child who's taking care of their elderly parents, and you're human. So how much time do you have for the things that are enjoyable to you? And it's just a question to think about. I found that a very important thing to ponder. And this next voice note is going to also touch upon this wearing so many hats. Very important.
Okay, I think burnout is very much a real thing, and I think it comes from wearing so many hats at the same time for a repeated long amount of time that causes it. So I think there's just, regular stress in anything people do. It creeps in, right? Like you have a job and you do it for a long time and it has its more stressful times and its least stressful times. And you can get burnt out from your job. I think parenting, you can feel like you're on top of your game some of the time, and some of the time you're just frazzled and, repeated frazzledness or whatever can also lead to burnout. I think the thing for me that I notice about burnout is I think it comes from wearing a lot of different hats at the same time. Does that make sense?
Okay, so this is another voice note that shares the perspective of wearing a lot of hats, which can lead to burnout. If you are responsible for so many different things and you don't have any reprieve or any relief, that is a recipe for burnout, 100%. And I think nowadays, such a stupid term, but for the lack of a better one, nowadays we do wear a lot of hats. I talk about one of my favorite parenting books, which isn't really a practical parenting book. It's a parenting book that I just found super interesting called Hunt, Gather, Parent. I love that book so much. And what was really eye-opening for me is that the reason why so many mothers feel so burnt out and at the end of their rope and so overwhelmed in our current time is that we are wearing too many hats. Like back in the day, you lived on a family compound, you had a village, the grandmother, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, like everybody was involved. You weren't responsible for every single aspect of your child's well being. And so nowadays, we are meant to be a mother, be a breadwinner, be our children's confidants, playmates. We're supposed to play with them. We're supposed to be present. We're supposed to be doing all the admin stuff. We're doing everything at the start of the nuclear family, where we became insular and we started not to live together with our family, and we're kind of went on our own. And this attitude of like we can have it all and do it all really caused an unrealistic amount, a load for mothers. And now we're feeling it because we weren't meant to do it all. We're meant to have a village. We're meant to have support. We're meant to have help. And it's harder to do nowadays. And I think that's a huge contribution to burnout. I forgot to comment on the last voice note at the end. She said, I don't know why you weren't flooded with voice notes. I thank God a lot of good voice notes and content came in, but it was slower than I expected. And I was like, what's going on? Are you guys all just like doing great? And I can't even tell you how many people sent a message back that they're just too burnt out to even talk about it. So here we are. Maybe that's your truth too. Like you're juggling so much. Like who has time to even talk about burnout? So I'm pretty confident that the issue is very real and is very prevalent. And that's why I feel called to talk about it. Okay. So our last voice note.
Okay, so I'm going through a major burnout moment in my life right now. And the thing that I'm realizing I don't have a very good grasp on is the line between pushing yourself to your limit and then what is pushing yourself too far. And I have certain goals in my life now that I want to do everything I possibly can to achieve them. And I'm realizing that I've sort of regressed to this martyrdom mentality that I think we're all raised with as Chabad, shluchim or Lubavitchers, with this idea of like, you give it everything you have to the cause and to the mission. And I do think that we've sort of evolved as a community to realize that should include your mental and physical health. But I do think that those are kind of just like semantics that we play with, like mind games. And ultimately, every person, a lot of us are left with a sort of like chronic martyrdom sacrifice mentality that's really, really hard to get out of, because once you've identified a goal that is more important than everything else in your life, it's sort of like, well, I don't even have permission to put any priority ahead of that, including your own self. And that I thought I've evolved past this. I thought I've become enlightened beyond this, and here I am struggling with this still at a much further time in my life that I thought I've already evolved beyond. So anyway, this is my current existential dilemma.
Okay, oh my gosh, I love this voice note so much. Shout out to Ellie, who's my producer, who's apparently going through burnout. Okay, so good. Wow, I love to end on this message because there's so much here to contemplate. So first of all, martyrdom. I definitely have wrestled with that all my life. I think Ellie's right in the fact that we are kind of imbued with this sense of martyrdom, and it takes a lot of conscious effort to understand how to navigate that with our current values and what we're taught, and also knowing that we do need to take care of ourselves. And I love that like that is the question of what's too far. Like if you have a goal and you're willing to and you want to reach this goal, how do you know what's too far? I ask this question of myself all the time. I recently had an experience where I wanted something badly and I maybe had the opportunity, but it was going to come at a heavy cost. And I talked about it in therapy, and I finally came to the conclusion for this particular scenario that I'm not willing to do it at all costs. And it had me thinking of this idea of like, what are you willing to do and how much are you willing to sacrifice for it? And also, how much are the people around you having to sacrifice for your dream and your goals? Like, if I want something so badly, but my kids are going to be impacted. And of course, that's going to happen because we all impact each other. But I think that's a really powerful question to ask yourself. At what cost? And are you willing to do this thing at all costs? And what does that actually mean? And I don't have any like brilliant answers to this dilemma because it's something that I'm also constantly thinking about. It's like, how far do we push ourselves? And if you're trained like me and a lot of, like he said, a lot of shluchim, a lot of Lubavitchers, a lot of, I think just all of us are really trained to be martyrs and are really trained to really give of ourselves and have a lot of self-sacrifice. It's in our DNA. How do we balance that? And when do we know when we went too far? And probably you know when you went too far is when you're struggling with burnout. But how do you handle it before you get to burnout? And that's what I wanted to end off with saying about my thoughts on how to prevent burnout. I have a very interesting experience where, again, my therapist is very part of this podcast. If he only knew how much he was part of it. But basically, I said to him the other day, I'm like, I don't know if I've ever experienced like full burnout because number one, I do have a lot of capacity. But number two, I've been in therapy for so long. I'm very self-aware and I have so many tools that I think that I skirt the edge of burnout, but I never actually fall into it because I have a lot of tools and I do a lot of things. I implement a lot of things in my life that keep me steady. Now, is it like, am I always in a good place? No, actually, no, in a big way. But I struggle often and I'm oftentimes feeling very exhausted or overwhelmed. But I think that's different than full out burnout. And I think the reason why my experience is this is because I do know what I need for my life. I know how much I need to put in to give, to put out. So, as you know, like I do go on a yoga retreat for a week in a year. I do have a lot of self-care things built into my day, which is basic stuff, but I don't think we realize how many people don't do the basic stuff. Like I work out, I eat well, I go to therapy, like all of those things built into my day are the things that keep me sane and not completely losing my mind. So I think there's a lot to think about here, but all the things that feel like cliche are cliche for a reason because they work. And it's easier said than done. I totally get it. But starting small, even if it's like Chaya said, getting a manicure, which forces you to sit down, or closing your eyes for 10 minutes, which brings me back to Paola's episode. She told me that every single day at like 2:30, I need to close my eyes for 10 minutes and do nothing. I'm not going to take a nap. It's not 45 minutes. It's just do nothing for 10 minutes and close your eyes. And don't underestimate how powerful that can be. So that's what we've got for today. I know there's so much more to discuss, and I'm sure over many different episodes, we will get more into this topic. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you for everybody who shared their stories and their thoughts. It means the world, and continue to do so. It's one of my favorite parts of the podcast when I get to hear from you guys. So keep it up.
Okay, so this podcast does not happen by itself. The magic takes a whole group of amazing people, and I want to tell you who those people are. So obviously, I'm your host, Chavie. Our producer and creative director is Eli Ben-Chion. He keeps me on my toes. He makes sure that I just keep growing and am on point and don't miss a beat. He's the best. Audio is edited and mixed by Reed Seeley. Also, unbelievable. He's so cool, calm, and collected. You kind of need that working with me. And the music, which is beautiful, is by Basia Schechter and Shaul Magid. And this is totally unexpected.